Afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all well, safe, and at home. I would really like to thank you for joining us today for the second in the series of the web panel discussions that we're trying to cover from Vinculum, which are related to the COVID-19 impact. The topic today is around creating social distancing and contactless experience with our customers post-retail. And we are going to focus largely around fashion retail. So we've been in a state of lockdown for a month, and I was just thinking the last time I went shopping, how many times I tried out an outfit before I decided to purchase one, or even a situation where I picked up something and I decided I changed my mind and I decided to return it. Or for that matter, I pick up a gift for somebody and the person does not like it and the person decides to exchange it. I'm not sure any of these use cases would apply going forward at post-COVID once we open up. In fact, I ordered something which was a non-essential good before the lockdown, and I received a message yesterday which told me that I will not have the luxury of return given the changed circumstances. I also read a piece of news recently that Macy's, which is a leading departmental store in America, they are apparently planning to open their shops, their stores in a matter of 6 weeks from now. And they're putting several measures in place. So social distancing on the shop floor, they're limiting the number of trial rooms. So clearly the format the total area may be the same, but maybe the format is completely going to change in terms of store layout, etc. All the tried clothes, which have been used by people in terms of trial, will be put up for airing for 24 hours before they are put back on the rack. And I was wondering whether I, as a consumer, will be open to trying out anything, because I would not be sure whether the virus is really out of that piece of clothing. So there's gross trust deficit, and the world has surely changed for all of us. And in all probability, this is my hunch, and we can have this discussion as part of this panel discussion, where we'd like to understand what will the stores really accept any exchange going forward, or will they not? And in fact, if I bought something from marketplaces, will I have the luxury to return it going forward? So each day we are uncovering a very, very new change situation, and public health, safety, hygiene rating, to my mind, is becoming the key metric for consumer preference, more than even product, the range, the location, or the big sale. Technology is going to play a big role in facilitating this change, and which is what brings me to the expert panelists that we have today, where we try to speak with them and get to know on some of the digital disruption that they foresee at fashion retail post-COVID and how they are enabling it. So let's begin by welcoming our expert panelists. The first one is Manjunath Prasanna, a veteran in digital technology with over 2 decades of experience. The first seeds of digitization actually happened in photography with the onset of digital cameras. And Manjunatha was part of the launch of the Sanyo digital cameras and Toshiba DVD players. So he has a rich experience across consumer electronics, home appliances, IoT, retail. And he's now the SVP for digital transformation at Agna Software, which is essentially driving retail disruption at Agna through their flagship product, Magic Mirror, and a whole lot of other things that he will talk about as we move forward in our discussion. Our second panelist is Shabari Raje, who is the co-founder and chief product officer at Find Me a Shoe, which is a virtual fitting tool to complete the contactless fitting experience. So Shabari comes with a master's in product design, and I like the way she describes herself, which is that she's passionate about building products which change status quo and impact complete ecosystems. And I guess that's exactly the need of the hour. So her role focuses on taking cutting-edge technology in the most user-friendly form to the market. So thank you, Manjunath and Shabari. I am Rachna Prasad. I'm the CMO at Vinculum, a SaaS platform. And I'm playing the moderator with the objective to discover how technology can play a big role in creating a contactless experience at retail, which is going to be both online as well as offline. Before I start, going forward, I would just set some hygiene rules in place. The first is that the session is being recorded, and it's been pre-programmed to have everybody on mute except the panelists. If you have any questions during the course of this discussion, please feel free to put them down on the chat window. And my colleague Sakshi will be taking them on, and she'll serve them on a first come, first serve basis at the end of the session. We also have a poll question in the middle of the discussion. So I would urge you to participate in the poll question and keep yourself engaged. So let's start with the session. The first question is essentially around the imminent lockdown, which is now easing off day by day, but the world has clearly changed. So this question is to both Manjunath as well as Shabri. Government and civic bodies are looking at putting together certain guidelines on social distancing at retail. And some, what do you think are some of the mandatory changes that you foresee, which brand and retailers will have to make, keeping public safety in mind? And not just the buyers, but also from a brand perspective, the complete supply chain, the warehousing, the distribution, and also the staff care. How do you think these changes will impact digitization at fashion retail? So, maybe Manjunath, you may want to start first.
Okay. First of all, thanks a lot, Rachna, and welcome viewers. What I would want to start with is probably the current situation where during lockdown and post-lockdown, to quote examples, I'm sure a lot of you would have visited FMCG stores during lockdown. And then post-lockdown, we have seen the people going out for liquor shops and things like that. The sort of social distancing and the safety measures adopted there itself is indicative of the expectations that are being set from the bigger guys, the bigger players in the retail industry. Okay, so those are indicators basically that this is the bare minimum which is anyway expected out of these stores when they reopen. Okay, so social distancing, contactless shopping, and the hygiene of the stores per se is anyway going to be mandatory, whether it is a Kirana store or whether it's a big store. These are very hygiene factors which are going to be anyway expected out of a store. This is as far as the retailer is concerned. I understand that a lot of retailers are also working towards changing the store layout, towards making things look the store this thing look very less crowded. In fact, there is also a talk about managing the crowd in such a way that at a given point of time the shop floor will have only those customers which is permissible for that shop floor area, whatever it is, keeping the social distancing in view. This is one part of it. The second part of it is the government going to keep quiet? I doubt. I doubt very much, because ultimate responsibility of social safety rests with the government. And as they allow each and every institution to open its doors, they're going to pass some strictures. The way they have done that with some already, they're going to pass some strictures. Nobody knows what is the thought line over there. Okay, but I'm sure they have already got that ready, and government is consulting experts on this subject for various industries. It could be manufacturing, it could be retail, it could be education, whatever it is. I'm sure they are setting some guidelines. And I have examples with me, which I will show probably a little later, about a couple of governments across the world, especially the UK. The British Retail Consortium has recommended something to the UK government, and UK government has set some guidelines, which is not to the liking of the retailers per se, but that's the fact of life. And also, certain provinces in Canada also have set some rules for the retailers to follow. So what happens in these countries could easily get replicated elsewhere, because everybody seems to be following the same pattern. Probably what is followed in China may not be replicated elsewhere, because there is a lot of maturity that is required to implement what China is implementing over there. So my answer to this is there are two parts to it. One is the customer expectation, one is the government strictures. Both will fall in place, and somewhere there is going to be a meeting ground which the retailers will have to implement.
So would you be sharing some of the examples of UK and Canada going forward?
Yeah,
okay,
yes,
great.
Yeah.
Great. So Shabri, what is your take on this?
Thank you, Rachna. Hey, thanks for the kind introduction first. So, and it's really nice to have this discussion exactly at the time when, I think everything's about to change at this point. So, like you pointed out, there are multiple paths to retail, the supply chain, the entire delivery system. But I think the most pivotal is the touch points, which, when you look at it, there are two critical areas where the customer typically tends to in. One is the trial or the fitting or whatever that experience where you're selecting it, and then is the payment. And I think both of these are going to come under a fair bit of scanner from the government as well as the retailer as the practices we know them. I mean, both offline and online. I mean, let's start with offline first. So where the trial room was a very, very central part to the experience. But I think part with government regulation, part with the business redesign, there's almost going to be a rethinking of that approach. How is trial room going to look? It'll be limited. Maybe it'll have some virtual technology. It's not going to remain the same as we have it today. And definitely there's going to be a part regulation on that. Similarly for online, I mean, returns has been at the discretion of, both the consumer and the retailer. But I think there'll be much more stricter guidelines regarding what you're allowed to return, what you're not allowed to return, whether it's permissible. And it's going to start getting sort of regulated. Same would happen even for payments, I believe. That maybe COD is going to be a thing of the past. It's not going to be something that is going to go ahead, or even something like a try and buy, which kind of went around the issue of size and fit. And I think these certain aspects, whereas managing a supply chain and everything, maybe it can be a little more controlled because there's no sort of direct consumer interaction. It's all within the company people. They can have certain guidelines and it can be controlled. But where this interaction between the retailer and the end consumer comes, I think that's the two areas where I think the government is definitely going to come down with certain rules. And we expect, in talks with multiple retailers, what we've seen that these two areas, one is trial and fit and one is your payment systems, are set for mega changes. That's so far what we see going ahead.
Okay. So, I mean, how does the consumer experience or the purchase experience specifically, what are the changes that you foresee on that front? When I look at it, so what you said was the government is anticipating certain things, or you expect certain guidelines to change for retailers. But from a consumer standpoint, what are the expectations that they have, and what are the key changes that will happen in the purchase journey? What you think will be the key touch points where the emergent technology will enable that change?
Absolutely. I mean, this almost breaks my heart to say this, but in one era, shopping used to be this fun social thing that people did together, especially in the physical stores. I don't ever think that's going to be likely. Like, I don't think I'm taking my 4-year-old son to a store anytime in the future, because so buying shoes or garments for him is extremely tricky for me because of the size, touch and feel, so many issues that come in place. I mean, already it had become much easier. There was already a precedence. There was a convenience to buying it online. But still, at some point that we used to go, and this entire habit that, hey, let's take a walk, let's browse a few things. And there was a social element. And from a behavioral perspective, I think that is set for a mega change. More and more people who didn't adopt online earlier, now it has become a necessity, and it'll set a precedent that, hey, this is the way it's going to be done, right? Which we had already, and in a way, that trend was already in motion a few years ago. This incident has probably just given it an exponential shot in the arm in the form of necessity that I don't have a choice anymore, pretty much. So one of the key things is going to be, how am I going to bridge this gap that I get in while going into a physical store? So to my mind, there are about 2 or 3 things that come into play. That one is, first thing is I need to determine the fit, because without understanding the fit, any sort of purchase is going to be very, very difficult. And that's where our technology, we see ourselves playing a key pivotal role in saying that, hey, we will bridge that gap for you for footwear. And maybe we can even actually tell you what you need in terms of health and make it a scientific recommendation. Because today, fit has been a subjective aspect. People go, they try, sometimes it fits, maybe 2 days later it doesn't fit you that well, and you make a return. But what we see is that this is the point we definitely make an intervention. That's one, like fit technology, that's our product, will come to that later. Second will definitely be a look and feel factor to, how you select. So maybe things like mirrors, maybe things like 3D draping tools. stuff like that. And I definitely think the third aspect, which is almost like, I think some sites had already started it, which allow people to co-browse and send each other something, send a pic, you want to take a picture of yourself while you're browsing and send it only to your friend, not to the world. Maybe somebody wants to post it on Facebook, but sort of these social elements of shopping, which again, I think there's a scope for even those. I mean, all of these things, and of course the payment seamless module. So these are the, I think, key 4 areas where I see a dramatic change, or the change which is set in motion to really accelerate at this point. And Finvision is, very, very in the midst of it in what do you say, sorting out the fit issues. So I'll stop then here. We can hear Manjunath's perspective on that, and then we'll come back.
Sure.
Okay. Fortunately for me, I've been talking to quite a few retailers, and when I talk to them during this lockdown period, I understand the top of the mind question they have is, what are consumer expectations from us? Is the consumer behavior going to change drastically? Please understand that today the social media is so strong that during the lockdown they have been fed with all sorts of visuals and pictures and videos. Their mind has got tuned to a fear factor. And believe me, this is a pandemic. It's not an epidemic. Every time there was an epidemic, it has left a scar on the hearts and the minds of the people, much less the consumers. And this is a pandemic of global nature, and people are not going to take this lightly. So there is going to be a drastic change in the behavior, which is to be expected. If not, I think I would be surprised. And even as I was forming the opinion myself, my opinion got vindicated with a couple of survey reports which has come up from Accenture, which they have done during April, during the lockdown across many countries, and by Capgemini, which has also come during the same, almost similar period. 2 independent survey were conducted, and both indicate to one thing, that whatever change you see in consumer behavior is there to stay. Now, that is a very crucial thing, because a lot of retailers are asking, okay, is this social distancing, safety measures, is it going to be a, what do you say, temporary phenomenon, 1 month, 2 months sort of a thing? So then their investment mind will go into one particular way. Whereas if it is going to be a long-term thing, obviously their mind has to get tuned to something which has to be realized over a long period of time. Yes, sir, I am saying that this is something which has been proved, that this carryover or the hangover will be there for a minimum period of 9 months to 1 year, as per one survey report, and as per the other survey report, it goes beyond 1 year. And what starts as a coercion, because this is a coercion, you are forcing certain things on yourself in terms of your change of behavior. What starts as a coercion becomes a habit. And what becomes habit over 9 months or 1 year is bound to become an addiction. So if you are expecting a hygiene in the store for whatever reason it is today, that hygiene is going to stay for long, whether it is in terms of ambience or it is in terms of being contactless or whatever contributes to the hygiene, it is going to stay for long. Maybe the sanitizers will vanish after 9 months, but other things, the change in the layout, the change, less crowding, everything will stay for long, for the good. Otherwise, we all have seen one thing. We have 10 years back, what was the condition of the jewelry shops across the country? We used to walk into small kirana jewelry shops with a goldsmith sitting in. Today, if somebody opens a jewelry shop, even a medium-sized retailer, he knows what sort of ambience he has to maintain, because people have got used to it. So that is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. And also, I think, Shabri, you touched a very important point, that, the social element of going to a mall or a shop is completely going to change. I would just go, perhaps it's just going to be very, very need-based. I will not plan a shopping day with a gang of girls, which is followed by some food and a movie or whatever. So I may just perhaps, and I think, my whole take is the whole omni-channel experience, which I will actually get accelerated. There'll be a need for acceleration on that front as well, where I would actually want to do the browsing online, maybe select online, and there's just a curbside pickup, which then happens where I just go to pick up the stuff.
Right. Or
or,
the other way also, right? Like what we've seen is some of our retailers saying that, hey, we are not going to have a full-fledged store, but maybe the nature is going to be in a pop-up store where
yes,
somebody
that's
comes,
right.
they see what they like, they don't buy because those are not the products you take home. You sanitize your hands and you walk away and we send you a fresh piece, you know, from elsewhere, like a
Yeah,
preview
yeah,
model where you
yeah.
come and you see what quality we have. Like for example, somebody selling a leather product, you come actually, you visually verify that this is the leather grain, you know, so much touch and feel about it.
Hmm.
Maybe, but it's just going to be a pop-up shop with a few samples and we may not have everything because that may still be a need, or it may be something that they've been convinced but they don't want to pick it up, they do it through this model, right? But that change is definitely coming, whether it's going one way, whether it's a pop-up or whether it's just a curbside pickup, which, you know, the models will evolve, I think, in the next few months as we go down this road.
Sure. Yeah, so you essentially just go touch and feel the product. You're okay with it, and a fresh product gets delivered to
Correct.
your place.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So
Maybe
it's
that, you
interesting.
know, yeah, that's
Yeah.
something that, you know, one of our I was just having this conversation with a group of similar fashion tech retailers in New York, and this is something that was, you know, top of everybody's mind, that we are going to change our retail formats to that one, and nobody's even looking at a traditional retail at this point, right? Like, so it's
Sure.
going to be this probably.
Sure, sure. Great. So I'll just dwell a little bit more on the returns and exchange piece because that seems to be popping up in every conversation, every article.
Yes.
And, I would just want you to tell me a little bit about, with trust replacing convenience right now. How do you see returns and exchange, experience coming out? A little deeper conversation around that. And
Absolutely.
I mean, if I don't really like a finished good, or if it was a gift, as I talked about, or I
Right.
discovered later that it's damaged.
Right.
So as a consumer, does it mean that, oh, I've just missed the bus and I just cannot exchange? Because, this is going to be, this was actually a selling point for a lot of online
Yes.
players, that they made an entry into the market with this whole concept, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
if you can just, if you can dwell a little bit on the returns piece, that will be great.
Absolutely. So I think returns has been a big blanket, and like you rightly said, it has been their entry saying, "Hey, don't ever worry about it. We'll no questions asked to return," and that
Yeah.
has been the slogan, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a lot more graded on from this point onwards. And again, like many things, this change was already in motion. Like for example, with lingerie and few things, you were not allowed to return, and people had started taking that stance, although it wasn't there earlier. And even as we work with retailers, we've seen them create like a more graded system on returns. Yes, if it's damaged, of course not. Maybe you're going to throw the product and they're going to refund you the money, and they account for that with insurance. You know, because there's a reverse logistics that's expensive and dangerous to everybody. Again, because again, it has to be sanitized. And one of the things that people talk when they do returns is actually just the cost of logistics. But what is actually important is now to understand the cost of doing quality checks also, a hygiene, a dam. And this has been very prevalent in the EU. You know, when we've actually had conversations, we've actually noticed that in EU, they don't allow you to give you a free return for quite a few retailers follow the practice unless you're asking for another size and it's established that it's very true and your need to return was sort of legitimate. And there was a pretty stringent norm. Otherwise, you pay for it. Even Amazon has, in the US, has slowly started moving towards that. So this entire, utopia of, hey, I can just keep returning as much as I like, which American consumer was very, very fond of. I think that is definitely set for a paradigm change. That yes, I mean, returns will not go away. I mean, it is a need, but there's going to be an added cost of doing this quality check apart from the return, the time, the convenience, and nobody's actually winning on that. I mean, till date, I think the retailers just gave it as an easy entry point to build confidence in the online system. You know, when pretty much they move people from offline to online. But today, I think the confidence is going to be more around why didn't it fit me well first? You know, what hygiene rating it had to begin with, or what quality rating. And I think all of these technologies which provide a much more accurate rating on fit, on quality, on expected delivery time are going to be the key differentiators rather than having this blanket return policy. I think that's definitely of the past. And I think even the stores would have something similar because you've taken it from the store, you've taken it back home. Who's going to do the sanit? You know, when if you come back with it, there's a whole process that they have to implement. It's not easy right there either, right, to do that.
Sure.
Okay, I have something to say here.
Sure.
I believe returns are going to be a taboo going forward.
Be a taboo. Sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't get
it's
that.
going to be a
Taboo.
taboo. Yeah,
Okay.
going forward.
Okay.
Simply because if you look at the past experience, returns obviously are the highest in the online space as compared to the offline stores. That goes without saying, and more so within online also. Again, it is the lifestyle products, the apparels and the shoes and things like whatever goes. The lifestyle products get returned much more, so much so that 30% is the return rate in some of the marketplaces. It's as high as that. Okay, so it is going to be a major problem anyway. The online companies have to deal with. 30 might become 50%. Whereas offline companies who are not used to returns now will have to deal with a different kind of a problem. You are talking about Macy's, where they say if anything is returned, obviously it will be kept away for 24 hours and then put back into circulation. Now, two things come to my mind. How do they certify, or how does the customer get the confidence that this has been treated for 24 hours? Is there a way of certifying it? No way. Second thing is, I've gone a little deeper into it and studied it. Coronavirus stays longer on harder surfaces. That doesn't mean that it doesn't stay on clothes and fabrics. It has been proved that it is staying lesser, it does stay. There is no scientific way of figuring out how long it stays on a particular surface. As of now, it has not been done. So there is no sure shot way of saying that clothes which return, if it is held back for 24 or 48 hours, it will go away. Some people are even talking about apparel being steam ironed, the returned one, and then put back into circulation. Yes, these are all speculation. Okay, these are all speculation. Even if it is true, it is difficult to prove that this would be contagious free. So it is very difficult. So this will always play on the minds of the customer, and returns are going to be a taboo, for which our company is working towards one particular thing, which is basically when it is pure play online purchase, it results only in huge returns. An omni-channel approach, basically facilitated by augmented reality or a smart mirror like what we have, reduces the chance of returns by to a large extent, because a contactless trial is already possible in a physical store. So the reasons for return, I'm not saying 100%, but at least 70% of the reasons for return is already dealt with virtually in the store without letting the customer touch the cloth.
Sure.
Now, that's a great way of solving the returns problem for both online as well as the offline stores. This is what I'm coming to.
So maybe you can throw some light on how Agna Solutions is going to, and even Shabri, you can tell me a little bit about how Find Me a Shoe will facilitate the contactless shopping experience. We'd love to know a little bit about your solutions.
Okay, so I would like to, I would of course make a small presentation on this, but before that, I would like to take you through this particular challenge in two different ways. One is retailers, when they reopen the store, they have two challenges. One is how do they maintain the store hygiene? How do they maintain the public safety norms in the store? That's all there, which we have discussed enough right now. But that is a second challenge they will have to come across. The first challenge is how do they get the customer to come to the store? How do they entice the customer to leave the comfort of his couch and come to the store, even given the assurance that, hey, everything is safe in the store, fine. But how does they do that? What has happened is during this lockdown, it has done one thing to the customer. It has given them the taste of online commerce. Yeah. People have got wedded to something called convenience. Forget about the safety for the moment. Even convenience, people have got wedded to it. That being the case, there is more than one threat.
Sure.
The physical one is how do you invite and bring back your loyal customer? I am saying bring back your customers. Okay, the retail experts are quoting one thing. They're telling retailers, don't focus on retaining your store. Please focus on retaining your customer.
Yeah.
That is very important.
Sure.
Keeping that in view, I think we have a two-part solution. Okay, I'm going to present that solution.
Sure.
I'm just going to open the screen for that.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see the screens?
Yeah.
So I will just take back the discussion by a couple of minutes. This is what I was trying to tell, that in some cases the governments are enforcing a few things as far as the safety, public safety norms is concerned. So here it says it's shopping, but as you know it, changing rooms will be closed, no couples or groups allowed, and using cash to be discouraged. This has come out from the British Retail Consortium. Okay, so the governments are stepping in, the trade bodies are stepping in. In another case, this is in Canada. They have released a detailed guidance for clothing retailers. For example, one of the retailers said that a very smart part of his business is returns, and he is planning to destroy apparel returns in the field. So, I mean, the guy has gone to the extent of saying that I'm going to discard it. So if you look at it, typically the contactless shopping is what this whole thing is talking about. They're encouraging indirectly that everything has got to be contactless.
Sure.
Okay, so now this is another thing which has come up, that some stores have already started planning. The hangover is likely to remain for the entire year. So the government, the retailers are expecting some guidelines from the government ministries and other agencies. This is for India, okay, to ensure compliance of high level of sanitization, hygiene practices in their shops. They're going to the extent of providing safety and PPE kits to the employees. Now, this is almost like a healthcare system getting into a retail environment. Okay, so I mean, these are published articles. So obviously, there is some thing to be believed somewhere. Okay, so that's exactly what I'm trying to say. So a lot of theories are being floated. Of these will come into something, but it's there very much. Now, this is as far as the consumer behavior is concerned. Like people were asking, okay, is this a temporary phenomenon, this change in behavior, or is it going to be for long and things like that? As you see this graph, if you see every parameter, the first line, the dark blue line, is immediately after the lockdown or post-COVID situation. The second parameter is 9 months to 12 months after that. There has been no reduction nor no change in the consumer behavior even after 9 to 12 months. And this is a survey which has been done by Capgemini Research Institute, okay, between April 4 to 8. So this clearly shows that whatever behavior real change you see in the consumer is there to stay, as simple as that. And this is something which Accenture has come up with. So I'll read out the most interesting part of it. While we have been seeing these trends for some time, what's surprising is the scale and the pace. Compressing, that he's talking about the leap into the digital arena. Compressing into a matter of weeks, changes that would have ideally taken years.
Yeah.
Okay, people embracing the change is it's just getting compressed. The new consumer behavior and consumption is expected to outlast the pandemic, stretching far beyond 18 months and possibly for much of the current decade. So that doesn't sound good for retailers, but that's the harsh reality.
Harsh reality.
Yeah.
Sure.
So this is as far as, I mean, this is throwing ourselves back to what we were discussing, but taking it forward, I was talking of a two-part solution. The two-part solution is basically about the first part of it is how do we incite the customers to leave the comfort of his home and come to the store in the first place. He's got used to online shopping. He's got used to that convenience. He's got used to this thing experience. So what we are suggesting to the retailers is initially, please don't expect the customer to come to your store just like that, even if you forget the fear factor. Rather, you take the store to the customer.
Okay.
Take the store to the customer. He is your loyal customer. He has always been patronizing you. Take the store to him. It should be reminiscent to him that, okay, yes, this is the store which I used to visit for this. So how do you do that? Question is, use technology. What we are doing is we are recreating the store on virtual platform. This is called visual commerce, where the store as it is completely recreated online. So the store is presented online, floor wise, section wise, subsection wise. And there is a walkthrough that is possible through the store, which gives the customer an impression that he's actually walking through the store. And to add to the flavor to that, every merchandise item lying in the store can be touched upon. When I say touched upon, obviously you can use a cursor.
Okay.
The moment you click that, it opens up a pop-up box. And the moment it opens up, there are a plethora of information that is coming, which the customer is otherwise prone to go and seeking it from the sales person in the shop floor.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Product specifications, price, everything comes there. That I have the video of it, but I don't know whether I can project it here. Let me just.
Or maybe I think, if you can share the video, we can pass it to the participants.
Okay. No, the video actually is compelling enough. That will curtail my explanation completely. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So this is how it is. I'll just play it for 2 minutes. See, this is Van Heusen store, which is being recreated.
I don't think we can see it.
I don't think we can see the video.
We can only.
You're not able to see.
No.
Okay. I'll go back to the slides. I think. Okay, I can share the video later. That's not an issue. Okay, so now coming to that is the first challenge of getting the customers to the store, because once you give a virtual walk through the store, which is already existing, and these stores can be created location wise. I mean, different for different localities, depending on which store is in the neighborhood of the customer. So it can be done. The inventories in the store, in the visual, is tuned to the real-time inventories of the store. So nothing can go wrong. If customer ends up choosing a particular merchandise, it is physically available in that merchandise.
Even if it's a chain. So for example, let's say a Haldiram, which is at a particular place, it will actually give you the exact SKU of that particular location, right?
Location, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And of course, they have to update the inventory data in the backend on real time. That is one prerequisite. But what I'm saying is there are two possibilities. One is the customer can purchase it online, like the way he would purchase it in the e-commerce site. He can purchase it online after experiencing the product online, or he can choose to go to the store. And the beauty is when he's choose to go to the store, there is this thing saying that reserve and buy. A button can come up. The moment somebody clicks that reserve and buy, because he has seen the product there, he has seen from all angles. Hey, for example, the refrigerator is actually completely shown with the door open from all angles. Everything is possible. It's digital medium, so everything is possible. On rotational basis, you can show the product. Having convinced himself for a particular product, he has convinced himself. Now he wants to make a purchase, but still, if he wants to see it physically once, he can go for reserve and buy. The moment he presses that, there is the time slot screen which can come up on this thing. So the retailer throws up the time slots which is possible for the customer to visit. The customer can choose the date and the time slot, and at the appointed hour, that means the customer can seek a pre-appointment with the retailer and go to the store. What does it do for the retailer? It self-regulates the crowd to the retailer. He doesn't have to contend with the same situation as the liquor shops or the FMCG stores. The customer comes at a pre-appointed time. So this opens up a Pandora of possibilities. That's what I'm trying to say. And that is a solution which we are sitting with right now. Many retailers are talking to us already on that part of it.
Sure.
Now, I am coming to the augmented reality part of it, the magic mirror. Okay. Now, this is very, very interesting. Before that, a slight backdrop. Okay. I just picked it up today. This has been published yesterday. China's luxury industry to be more customer centric. And the article goes at length to say that what is that they're doing for that. The one which caught my attention was some key drivers of the next industrial revolution in luxury fashion will be leading edge technologies like augmented reality and artificial intelligence. With countries across the world imposing travel restrictions and social distancing, technologies like 3D printing, augmented reality enabled beauty camps, and virtual try-on smart mirrors is the next big thing in the digital fashion. So it's already being talked about. It's already being implemented elsewhere in the world. It's a matter of time before it gets implemented in India as well. What I'm going to now touch upon is basically the augmented reality based magic mirrors, which we also fondly call automated vending machine. And I will let you know why I call automatic vending machine. So this is how it is. The magic mirror looks like this. It's a kiosk. This is basically a customer stands in front of it at a distance. So there is already a social distancing built in, even much before the pandemic happened. Why he stands at a distance is this is not a touch screen. Another plus point. This is not a typical touch screen kiosk. This is not a touch. This is a gesture control. Like probably people would have used the Sony PlayStation at that point of time. It's a gesture control where from a distance he gestures, and that enables him to select the merchandise, to go into the merchandise, to put it on to himself through the mirror, and to take a photograph, to take a video, pass it on to his mobile for a selfie, pass it on to his mobile for social vetting of his choices, even as he's in the store. There are so much of it opens a lot of possibilities because it's a completely digital medium. And the sort of the selections he makes is basically the digital merchandise. That is the digital version of the physical products available in the store. Okay, so obviously it opens up a lot of possibilities. And this is how it works. The virtual mirror projects your image. You take your pick from the store's catalog through the gestures on the mirror. The screen then superimposes the garment on your reflection. The new image moves as you move. So there are various stages to it. Actually, you will have to experience that to actually understand how well conceived that product is.
Yeah.
And this is how it looks like in the form factor. There are a host of goodies which go along with the product. It is hygienic because there is no touch. The physical fabrics are not used at all. So it's digital fabric, so it's hygienic. Social distancing is possible. In my subsequent slides, I show you how it can be completely regulated using this magic mirror. It is contactless by nature. And because of the fact that you are connected to your web commerce, you are connected this machine to your web commerce also, and to your marketing platform if you have, you can do cross-selling and upselling in real time over there. That is possible. Spot promotions possible. All digital promotions. It's a digital trial room where people don't have to change the clothes, where people don't have to enter enclosed enclosures. Obviously, there is no question of opening the door, handling the doorknob, nothing like that. And dealers, now this can be used not only at the retail store, not only inside the retail store, it can be used outside the retail store in malls, in airports, in lobbies, and other places.
Sure.
And also a social media share, which is possible. That also is a part of this. All these are goodies surrounding this machine. I fondly call it as auto vending machine.
Okay, great.
Some of the highlights are virtual shelves, digital inventory, self-navigation. It doesn't require another salesman to be with you, standing next to you. Again, social distancing. Unmanned kiosks, contactless marketing, because marketing is done at a distance on the screen.
Yeah.
Virtual try-on, contactless payment and self-checkout, because as I tell you, this screen, you can start your purchase journey in front of the screen and close your purchase in front of the screen. The complete journey of discovery, search, selection, shortlisting, try-on, and then eventual purchase, everything can happen at one single station in front of the screen. He doesn't have to move his foot out anywhere else. So what happens is, in terms of payment, it is already integrated into a payment gateway and connected to the web store of the particular retailer. So it will go into the web store and then enables the payment. The payment can be done actually through a QR code interaction between the mirror and the customer's mobile. Customer will obviously not key in his personal data on the mirror. He will do that on the mobile and it gets paid. So it has been conceived in every possible manner as though this coronavirus is going to happen shortly. Okay, so somebody had that premonition. Okay, and then digital price tag. There is a dynamic pricing that is possible on this screen. Suddenly you decide today you have so much of stocks of X merchandise and you need to drop the price and all. For you to do it in a physical store, it takes a hell of a lot of things. Here you can do it dynamically across many stores, across the footprints, across the country in real time. That is possible. Then digital on-screen promotion. You know what? When the screen is not in use, when customer is not standing in front of it, you can use it as a digital signage in the retail store. You can run your promos, you can run the ads, you can run static images on that. And obviously, it promotes contactless selfie. As I told you, people can take photograph and transfer it to their mobile and then post it onto the social media through this. Because of this, it is not possible in a real life situation with a physical dressing room. Facilitates omni-channel fulfillment. Obviously, it is an omni-channel tool. Endless aisle. Endless aisle is a typical term used in omni-channel where the digital cataloging is bigger than the physical inventory of the store. So you tend to show more products on the mirror as compared to the actual products which is physically available on the store. And in case the customer makes a purchase, then he will be either allotted a store nearby to him where this inventory exists. He can go and pick in store, or it can be converted into an e-commerce order and the product is delivered to his house.
Sure. So I think there are a lot of questions which have come where, you know, people have requested for this presentation, which we will be doing. Okay. And you know, there is so we will also be progressing with, you know, a whole lot of other solutions that Manjunatha is going to talk about. But I'll just take a small, you know, as we proceed, Manjunatha, just 2 minutes. I'll just ask Shabri to just give us a little understanding as to how, while what he's talking about is of offline, how do you see the online part of it and your solution coming in on the online piece? And then we'll come back to the whole experience with respect to trial that you're talking about, Manjunatha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Shabri, you can just give me some,
So maybe I can share my screen and talk a bit about our solution.
Okay,
so,
let me close my screen then. 1 minute. Okay.
Right. So, is my screen visible?
Yes.
Everyone? Right. So actually, I mean, just to clarify, we actually support both online and offline retail.
Okay.
And like Manjuna has focused on the actual look and feel, we're extremely focused on getting the sizing right. And today, while the company is focused on footwear, we have plans even in apparel, fingers crossed, but we'll talk of footwear today, where fit becomes extremely key to you know, what is important to us, to buying a footwear. I mean, whether in the event, even if you go to a store, actually, whether you'll spend the time to try 10 shoes, whether you'll have somebody touch you and have a shoe fitted, those are questions which are going to change forever. And obviously online, this has been the key reason for dropping out a return. And there are fundamental reasons that the size scale only tells you one dimension of the shoe, which is the length. Whereas your foot happens to be a 3D object, where there are many, many shapes and objects to be considered in it. And what our solution is focused is around that. In a snapshot, we capture a digital foot profile. We capture the inner cavity of the shoe because, hey, Nike says size 8 and Adidas says size 8. Spoiler alert, they're not the same. Everybody's going to have a slight difference in fit. And it's very, very important to understand these two pieces of the puzzle. So understanding customer foot profile, understanding sort of a shoe foot profile. And then we put them together. And what we do is bring out this entire concept of doing a physical trial in 3 core pieces of tech. And this is a bit about ourselves, is that, you know, we are one of the 3 companies in the world who built a technology like this, which is, and today I'm happy to say we're pretty much at the best, you know, what you can get. We have a very simple product. You take a picture of your foot using an A4 paper in US, and we support the other kind of papers. That's it. What you're seeing here is all you need the customer to do. You can do this in store, but somebody can very well do it at the comfort of their home. They can do it for a child. They can do it for an elderly person. And that's all as good as a 3D scanner. So what you had to, you know, just 5 years ago, you had to go to a big store, and we had a mall in Bangalore where we had actually a physical scanner. But today, any $100 Android phone will support this, and boom, you have a foot profile where your complete feet measurement are taken out. of the equation. So that's a huge part of the puzzle when it comes to actually fitting a shoe. And just for a reference, I'm sure the audience here who's, veteran retailers would know that while apparel is little more forgiving, fitting in a shoe is extremely unforgiving. That if you get it wrong even by half a size or a little bit here and there, then the customer is going to call a return. And that is where we focus this solution, where we say, hey, we've got a very easy way to profile the customer, and it's completely integratable and seamless within your site. So this is just a demo site. You can change the way it looks, and there's no need for an app to start with. I mean, that is also, I know, a big barrier. Who downloads an app these days? It's all browser based. Take a photo and you're done. And this is a sample of one of our customers who's integrated our service. Next time the customer is shopping, instead of a size scale, you can actually populate for them, hey, it's actually going to fit you like this, for this particular model. Shabri needs to buy a size US 10D, and it's going to tell her how it's going to fit. That's the beauty of it, that we actually simulate how fitting can be, right? Like, so here's a fit score for me. So maybe I wouldn't buy the shoe, but if somebody else is buying this kind of a shoe, it's actually going to give them an average fit score, saying, hey, it's going to be a little snug for you here. And that is what actually you're subconsciously doing in a store. When you're actually walking around and trying a shoe, and we've taken that whole experience and put it in a way that, you can do it in the comfort of your home. You can also do this in a store, because even having a child to try out 10 different shoes is not going to be easy, even if he comes to pick the color he likes for whatever reason, or, pick actually the cartoon that's on it. But this tool can enable both in store as well as offline. This entire concept, where you had to try the shoe before you buy, is completely taken off. And there are other parts which we work as. One is, like I spoke, which is profiling the foot. The second part is we profile the inner cavity of the shoe. Like I mentioned, that's also equally critical. We have 2-3 different technologies for doing it, but at the end of it, we have a 3D representation of what the cavity is. So we are not going by the fact that, hey, the manufacturer has labeled it as a size 8. We create our own size certification, where we actually say that, hey, this is half size bigger, half size smaller. And then we put all of that data in the system. So that's pretty much a brief of, how we actually run it for a virtual thing. I'll stop here and maybe we can go to the next question.
Yeah. So I think this is just fantastic. And, I'm really sorry if we may be just overshooting on the time bit, but I think this is really interesting discussion. And I'm sure, our audience would also agree that there is a lot of very, very innovative understanding of some new technology that's actually emerging thanks to this crisis. Or maybe it was already there, but now we are becoming more and more aware, and it's become so much more relevant. So with all apologies, I would request the audience to stay on for some more time, because there's more coming up, especially with respect to how trial rooms are going to change and what's the kind of technology that we can look at. And Manjunath is going to take us through that as well. But before we do that, one quick round of a poll. Sakshi, if you would like to run for the people around.
Sure. So I'm launching the poll.
Yes, please do.
The question is, would you be interested to invest in digital technology to make your business contactless? There are 2 options, yes or no.
So we'll just leave this question for a bit. You'll just have a few seconds to give in your response, and after which we will go back to Manjunatha on the next set of, disruption that he's looking at with respect to consumer experience to make retail contactless.
So you have 5 more seconds to answer the poll. So 95% of attendees are saying that they would like to invest on this.
Fantastic. So my last question is going to be on something around that. But before we move on to my last question, maybe Manjunatha, if you'd like to just take us through the technology on trial, that would be interesting to see.
I'll do that. So this is a slide which is actually talking about the omni-channel, which I was talking about, how we encourage omni-channel through our product. We actually marry the online to offline. The initial search, research, selection, everything happens either through a mobile app or a web page, as you see on the right left-hand side, where there.
Manjunath, I think people are saying that you need to adjust the camera because they're not able to see your
Oh
face
God.
clearly.
Okay.
Yes, that's much better. Yes, thank you.
So, and so the reserve and try button is there on the web page. So people, if they have selected something, can opt for it. The moment they opt for it, mind you, whatever they have selected, shortlisted, will automatically go on to a mirror to the nearest store, wherever the mirror is installed. So as they walk into the store, the customer, obviously this is for the registered customers. There would be a mobile number registration. The customer can walk into the store. He is recognized at the mirror through his mobile number or whatever it is. The moment that is done, only those items which are selected by him comes onto the mirror, and he goes for a fast try on there itself, decides what suits out of the selection, what suits him best, makes a purchase and comes out very fast. This is very, very important, because please understand that there is no strolling around, there is no walking around, there is no searching around in the store. Everything is done online. He goes to the store only for a trial and an experience and to see for himself, satisfy himself. That is done in a jiffy, and he comes out. So to a large extent, we are actually managing his fear of going to the store this way. Now I will bring some real life situations pre-COVID and post-COVID. During the COVID.
I don't think we can see your screen.
What happened all of a sudden?
At least I can't see it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Even I can't. I don't think
Yes,
you've shared
Manjunath,
again.
you need to share.
I don't think you've shared the screen as yet. Nobody can see it. So Ramesh Venkatraman is saying that nobody can see it. 1 minute. So there is a share screen section which is there on the right hand side. If you can just.
What about now? Now?
I think something's coming up. Yes, we are there.
Okay.
Yes, please progress.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the real life situation which I would be talking about. How that transformation is going to happen in some stores. I've taken the real life situation. A saree store. This is the way it is being displayed today. A trial is being done this way, and this is how it is going to migrate to, with a lady standing in front of the mirror at a distance, and it's all gesture controlled. Similar situation for other type of clothes. This is how people enjoy today selecting their clothes, but this is how they are going to be entertained selecting their clothes. This is another view of the similar situation.
Yeah.
And this is very interesting, because selecting suits or material for suits is a different paradigm altogether, where you touch the cloth fabric many times, you touch many fabrics, and there is folding, unfolding done by the salesman right in front of you. So everything is being touched upon so many times that it sets alarm bells for somebody who's walking to the store in the present situation. Now, on the left-hand side, you see what we are doing. The fabric is converted into a digital suit, and there is a virtual try-on that is possible for the customer standing in front of that without him having to touch any fabric, nor allowing the salesman in the shop touch any fabric. It is all done virtually. It is all done digitally. Absolutely hygiene is maintained. And this is the pandemonium, typically in the pre-COVID situation in a departmental store. And this is how it gets organized in a departmental. Our magic mirror implemented. You see, subtly you see around that there is a fencing that is put there. So this will usher in an era of self-regulation on the part of the customer itself. He knows that he has to go and stand inside the cubicle, and then you can also say that you're not, his accomplice is not allowed. They can stand outside the fencing, whereas he stands inside and goes through the complete experience. And between two customers, the social distancing is already maintained. So the trial room in the pre-COVID situation versus the trial cubicles in the post-COVID situation, I'm depicting here pictorial. I think picture says better than words.
This is quite eye-opening.
Yeah. And this, our product, though we keep calling it magic mirror, it's not just a mirror. It's a combination of 5 products today, which is available in a physical store. It serves as a digital signage, as I explained to you. Mannequins are no more required, because you can run static images of this, and that too with not lifeless mannequins, but with real people on that. Then trial rooms anyway are not required. It's an interactive tool by itself. It's gesture control, not touch screen. And then since the payment gateway is integrated, POS screen also, it doubles up as a POS screen.
Yeah.
So the idea is to sell fabrics globally, and a new marketplace opportunity can be created using this product. And this is what I say, everything is cloud controlled. So there is a central command station from where you upload all the fabrics digitally. It goes across, irrespective of it could be destinations across the world, anywhere. The mirror is standing over there. It is done in real time. The uploading is done in the real time. The downloading is also in the real time. Customers at various locations can try it out simultaneously. So this is a great advantage, especially when you launch your product for the first time. You get real-time feedback from the users even before you go for a full-fledged launch. So that is the power of this. Plus, even as a customer is trying it out at various locations, there is data being collected. See, this is also an IoT. IoT means there is a data collecting mechanism. The data being collected about what the customer likes, what he dislikes, what he chooses, which color does he like, which is the most selected time, where does he spend maximum time on which type of merchandise, and how many times does he open. Everything is collected and given as a data to the manufacturers or to the retailer, which is a great thing, because that will lead eventually to a demand-led inventory, not just off-the-cuff inventory. It's a demand-led inventory. People understand the trends going by the choices, and then they plan their inventory accordingly.
Sure.
And this is I said the footprint can be anywhere, since this sits not only inside the store, it can also sit outside the store. Footprints of this particular product can be anywhere. So that means you are as such because of this, without actually putting up a physical store in any of these places. And this is a slide to tell that it's not just retailers that we are addressing. A garment manufacturer, wholesaler, everybody comes under the ambit of digitization of fabrics. And this is what I'm trying to show in this slide. It goes along some length of the supply chain. The only point where we don't touch as of now is the yarn manufacturing or the fabric manufacturing. Other than that, everybody else in the supply chain get addressed because of our technology. And this is how we do the image capturing. Because for converting the physical merchandise into a digital merchandise, we need to do a lot of things. We need to do a photo shoot. We need to do back-end processing. Everything is taken up by Agna. Photo shoot can be done at the customer's premises, whereas the back-end processing is done at our lab. And this is how every product, including the accessories, the shoes, anything, purse, the wallets, any accessory can be digitized. To that extent, we are looking at a highly digitized world, purely from the shopping point of view. The only point of physical product is from the manufacturer directly to the end consumer. That's it.
Great.
This is it.
That's fantastic. So so I'm sure there are some questions which I see, which of course we will answer at the end. But there was one question which said, who's the supplier giving out Magic Mirror? So it's just answering that. That's Agna Software, and that's exactly where Manjunath is an SVP for digital transformation for Agna. And we will take on the further questions at the end of the session. But before we go there, there's one question which I'm sure everyone's really asking, waiting to ask, which is what's the kind of investment that's required for this kind of technology? And, given that we are going to, there is this whole thing of cash flows, there is this whole thing of conserved cash. I know that this looks like a good cost to invest in, but what's really going to be the size of that impact with respect to investment that's required, and how does it affect the bottom line? That's if you can just, both of you, if you can just throw some light on your respective solutions, that will be great.
Sure. So maybe I'll just go first and then.
Yes.
So one thing I'd like, we were discussing this yesterday, and one thought occurred to me is that, yes, I know we are in a situation, cash flows are tight, but there's also going to be a lot of realignment of costs as we come out and, realign to the new reality. Whereas there were probably like older costs where people spend crazy money putting hoardings on bus stops, and maybe that's something that people will not do anymore. And I would rather, encourage everyone to look at this as a realignment of costs.
You just busted the media companies, by the way.
Well, digital media companies are in queue and they're coming, or unfortunately, maybe the salesperson's cost, but I mean, there are going to be massive changes, so there will be certain cost savings.
Sure.
With specific to Find Me a Shoe, there is no hardware involved. Everything that we do is from a consumer's mobile itself, the pictures that are taken. So our setup costs are pretty low to scan the shoes, to actually come up with the digital foot profiles. Also, we work on a small sample and then we extrapolate. So typically the customers who work with us have recovered, you're going to be saving on the returns the day you go live with us. So that itself is a ticker mechanism. So,
yeah, and you said somewhere that, perhaps in shoes, there is around 70%, 60% returns, right?
yes, depending on the category, like for women's shoes with, nice high heels and all, it's very difficult to have them fit. And really depends on the brand, the category. But anybody who is experiencing returns, the day one that our service goes live, it actually helps you save that cost. And we expect a very quick recovery period of 2 to 3 months with a very minimal, zero upfront investment. So it's pretty lean to get us going, right?
Okay. And what about your solution, Manjunath?
Oh, I have a fairly long answer. Slightly bear with me. And I've divided the answer into 3 parts. Let me start with this thing saying that when a lot of retailers are already asking me this question, what about the investment? At this juncture, when we are so sitting hard on cash, what about the investment? I would like to tell them that they are talking to somebody on the other side of the table who is also under the same pressure. That is to start with, right? First thing. Second thing, it is always the money that begets money, obviously. So investment is required, but the question is investment in the right direction? So I'm trying to answer that right now. The tactical answer to that is, like Shabri said, there's a realignment of costs. And in our case, because of the fact that everything is now turning digital and the experience is digital, there is a lot of saving on the display space in a store, which is going to unlock the retail space. That means the store formats is going to change. Multi-floor stores are going to become single floor stores, and single floor stores might become small format stores. There's going to be resizing of stores, that's for sure. Second thing is optimizing inventory. Like I said, there is a term coined endless aisle, where you actually reduce the physical inventory to such an extent that you can manage it with small inventory, whereas your digital inventory is much more. So the shopping will still continue unhindered. So you are bringing down the cost of inventory. And the third is the reduction of manpower due to automation. There is a lot of automation that happens in the process, whether it is self-assist kiosks or a lot of things. So there is a reduction in manpower, which is good on two aspects. One is because less number of human beings, less care in the store, okay, for the consumers. Second thing is also the fact that there is a reduction in the cost of manpower for the retailer and the brand. These are the 2-3 things. Plus the fourth thing is what, again, Shabri mentioned. The cost of servicing returns will come down drastically, because the returns by themselves will come down because of this virtual try-on, which is possible there. Okay, so these are the 4 answers for as far as the tactical part of it. Strategic part, a parallel economy called experiential economy was already raising its head a few months, in a year back. What this pandemic will do is boost that, accelerate that, and any retailer who's investing on our products today is actually reinvesting into that economy, which is going to stay for long. So please don't look at the short-term gains, look at the long-term gains is also my second answer to that. Okay.
Sure.
And the third one is a very emotional thing. It says there has to be a visually appealing way of telling people that you have enforced certain things in the store. Merely changing a store layout is not enough. You have to visually appeal to the customers, the staff, the society at large, and also make a convincing statement to the governments that the changes what you have made really mean what you say. And this product sitting physically over there is a manifestation of the care you are throwing at the society. And that is more than what you can do. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Very well said. Very well said. Thank you so much, because that's something which is playing in everybody's mind, that while, how will you demonstrate, or how will you bring in the trust factor, and your technology not only finds the solutions for the retailers, but it also exhibits that trust that, yes, I have done my bit to ensure that, public safety and contactless is something that's foremost in our business plans.
One
So thanks
small,
a lot. This was
one small, one small listing injecture here. When we are talking about the social distancing, contactless nature, and the store hygiene and all, what is happening today is even the neighborhood kirana store, the barber shop, the parlors, beauty parlors, everybody are enforcing the same thing in their small way. The question is whether departmental stores are also going to follow the same thing. What separates men from boys? It is only investments like this that separates men from boys. This is what I am.
Sure. Thanks a lot. This was fantastic. I mean, I think, it's been such an eye opener for me myself. And it just gives me the confidence to step out and, buy something or go back to the mall and, look at purchasing something. Otherwise, as you rightly said, it's just a very, very habit changing thing that has happened to us. And we are all, the fear psychosis has really built onto our mind so much. So both the technologies, whether it's for shoes, whether it's for fashion retail, I think are completely path breaking. And thank you so much for joining and taking us through this very painstakingly. Sakshi, on this note, I'll pass the session to you. If you can just raise some of the questions that have come in to the chat box.
Sure, Rachna. Hello everyone, I'm Sakshi from Winkler's marketing team, and I'll be taking out the questions you guys just logged in. So the first question we have is from Mr. Rajendra Sharma is, what will happen to the sensory shopper who needed touch and feel? And will retailers have to deprive people from touching the products? Tactile deprivation.
So maybe I'll take a shot at that. I don't think it will ever go away, and that has been a central part. But like today, how we are simulating a fit and sort of a look, maybe there will be some simulations where, like, what somebody had shown earlier is that you come to a shop where you can feel like a box of different fabrics, and then you go sanitize your hands. You may not have like tons and tons of fabrics, but you'll have a few samples which are critical and which kind of, or maybe some few garments which showcase the finish of the particular brand, because that is central to them, right? Because every brand stitches a pair of jeans, but what they do different is what they want to showcase. And maybe there'll be different ways of doing that. Maybe there'll be, somebody was saying that, especially when it comes to makeup also, right? That touch and like how that product actually feels on you. You like it to go and try it out. It'll be a one-time use maybe. It's not going to be something that is how it is today. So that is an aspect that may not go away, but it will definitely be changed in the way it is done today.
Okay.
So the other question is from Mr. Anand. His question is, click and collect will get popular. If so, for what categories?
Actually, from whatever I have understood, click and collect has been popular across the world for FMCG category. It is still to be implemented for fashion, and definitely it is yet to be implemented for consumer durables, where customers will still want to, if not touch, at least perceive the product physically and then make a decision to purchase. So click and collect typically is for FMCG category. A pack of Bournvita remains the same whether you buy offline or online, or a pack of Horlicks for that matter. So click and this thing, that's it, as simple as it. And also there is something called curbside pickup that also is very popular more in FMCG category.
Thank you, Manjunath. This question is for Shabri and it's from Sheldon George. He's asking, since shoes fit differently across brands and even within styles of a brand,
yes,
how can someone shop online without free returns?
Okay, excellent question. I'm glad you asked that. So that's where the second, we have a solution which is two parts. One which understands the consumer's foot. And second, we also have a technology suite where we work with brands or retailers to understand different brands, and we almost benchmark the shoe. Say, for example, you have 200 models. We understand those 200 models are based on certain basic style breakdowns. Say there are maybe 10 to 15 different styles. We actually work with you to understand the inner cavity, or we scan them physically to create a digital model. And we know that this particular style is closer to an 8.25, or it's wider than the other 8. And when we give a recommendation, it's taking into consideration all of these specific dimensions. So I am happy to give an actual demo, and we can set up another session where we actually demo how we do this and demonstrate to you how we actually make a personalized recommendation. But without doing what you are pointing out, the recommendation is of absolutely no use. So that's pretty much very central to our business.
Thank
Great.
you, Shabri. The other question is, do you think due to low purchasing power of consumers, order in e-commerce industry will reduce?
No,
Sorry, go ahead.
okay. From whatever I understand, yes, the purchases will continue for the essential products, even if it is e-commerce or otherwise. It's continue for the essential products. Discretionary products, yes, will come under pressure, and more so the luxury items. They will definitely come under pressure. But I got an interesting antidote to this belief that basically essential commodity is needed by one and all, and the purchases will go on. As far as luxury items is concerned, that strata of people are definitely not affected by this economic downturn. And people who would want to buy luxury will continue to buy luxury. They're just waiting to vent their this thing out. Okay, their desire out to go, either to go out and purchase or purchase online. But the purchases for luxury items are going to happen. It
There
is
is this concept
the
of
one
revenge shopping.
Exactly, revenge shopping. You're
It
right.
actually
Revenge shopping.
happened in China, right? In Wuhan,
Yes, it
when
happened
it
in
opened
China.
back, the luxury showrooms were flooded
Absolutely.
the most.
Flooded.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
So, I mean, I think while there is going to be impact overall on the economy, I think nothing is specific that, okay, this particular category will suffer. I mean, we closely work with the shoe industry, and for them, we've actually seen, for some of the retailers, this has been the best time ever, actually.
Wow.
Because they have said, hey, no, we are doing our bit to supply shoes to doctors. You buy one from us and we are going to donate one on your behalf, or we're supporting a frontline worker, or we're supporting people in need. And somehow they could navigate and have people empathize around them to make a purchase. So I think it's also important how a retailer positions the strategy out. I mean, one of our retailers has said, no, we are a luxury brand, but we are going to hence give 10% to charity. And they got so much empathy and connect. So I think it's important to not ignore the situation and start playing it out to give the customer the confidence that we're in this together, right? We're not just taking your money and running away. We're all
yes
in this together. And I think that has made a difference.
Sure.
So Shabri, we have multiple questions and we are running out of time. So I'm clubbing 2 to 3 questions in one.
Okay.
So it's in
Let's
offline.
take a couple of more questions then, and we can then wind up the session, and whatever that's remaining, we can essentially address them offline.
Yeah. So in offline, salesperson guidance will help in reducing returns. So what is the average rate of return reduction?
I'm sorry, just say that again. So I didn't get.
In offline, salesperson guidance will help in reducing returns.
Right.
So what is the average rate of return reduction?
In offline store, so you're saying that definitely if a salesperson guides you to pick the right foot, right shoe, you don't expect a return. Is that correct? Did I get that question right, Sakshi?
Yeah, it's in offline sales, like there's a person there to guide you.
Absolutely.
Reducing in returns. So
yeah, they kind of guide you on what fit to buy, whether you should buy one size up and one size down, and we pretty much mimic that. Right? So it really depends on what style, what combination, what sort of product you're selling. But it could anywhere be between 30 to 60%. We could reduce your returns. Right?
Okay.
And
to
give my inputs on this, as I pointed out to you, as far as online is concerned, in case of apparel, the returns are as high as 30%. But physical retailers, I have understood currently the returns is as low as 7% for them, 5 to 7%, because of the fact that physical try is possible in a physical store, and people buy it after they have actually convinced themselves. So not only physical try, not only in case of, not only they're talking about fitment, it's also that whether that particular color suits them, whether the design suits them, everything is evaluated in a physical store, which is not possible in an online store. So obviously these are the percentages which are being talked about.
Thank you, Manjunath. We have another question. It's for Shabri. Will a typical consumer actually go through this process
of taking their picture?
Yes.
And
of through Find Me a Shoe. Yeah.
Yes, interesting. So again, this was something that people have asked us quite some time back, that do you think I'm going to photograph myself? And this is, I think, applicable even to Manjunath, that I think, yes, if the benefit of getting a good fitting shoe, of not going through a return, if the retailer, we've had retailers who've started taking a stand saying there is no free return unless you use our service. If the service and you still don't like it for another reason, okay, we'll still give you a free return. But for a fit return or for a stuff like that, there is a subtle push. And what we've seen is that if it's extremely easy to do, which, I think today our product has come to, it's very, very much doable. And in the past 8 months, we've seen a surge of adoption in this trend already. And post the situation today, I only, think that it'll accelerate. I mean, to just give a small analogy, few years ago, everybody used to go to the bank to deposit a check or stuff like that, or even to pay a bill. And that flip happens when, hey, now you take a photo and you do a digital online submission or a online payment. And I think that inflection point, even for retailers here, whether I'm taking a photo of my foot or I'm standing in front of a magic mirror to actually try myself out, this is going to be a paradigm shift it was already on the trend, and I think it'll just accelerate from this point onwards.
And it's just first time that you have to do, right?
Right, exactly. You have to just do this once. Unless for a child, for an adult, it's a one-time activity.
Yeah.
And how fast can you integrate this?
How fast we can integrate? A standard Shopify integration, we can get our foot scanning running in 3 days for you. Shoe scanning, the shoe part, we need to work with your inventory, but typically a mid-sized retailer goes live with us in 1.5 to 2 months.
And there is one more thing, one more angle to this, whether it is shoes or for that matter apparel. The moment you are brand decided and you are a loyal customer of that brand, you know that for that brand, that particular size of shoes or apparel, whatever it is, fits you. And you don't go every time to the store to check what size fits you. Obviously, fit is decided once unless you go out of proportion in terms of your body shape. What is repeatedly checked is for the color, the designs. How does this fit me? How does this suit me? Whether the whole ensemble, the top, the bottom, the combination, whether it looks good. These are things which are being explored in the store, not exactly the fitment every time. Fitment, as far as apparel is concerned, is looked into only when you are trying a new brand or when you are going for unbranded apparel, which, because the industry size, it's not standard across the brands. That's the point.
Sure. So I think we overshot the session by almost 22 minutes, but I'm sure people found it worthwhile, because I find that even after we've shot, the audience has retained, they've continued to participate. So clearly it shows that it's been a enriching session for everybody. So thank you so much. And both Manju as well as Shabri. And thank you so much to the audience for staying tuned with us. We will be coming with more in the series of, COVID impact series. And I continue to, expect your participation. Whatever we share on the webinar, the web panel discussion, as I said, it's been taped. So we will share with you the recording along with the slides and the video that Manju promised. Yeah. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
And thanks, Sakshi, for holding this together.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachna.
Thank
Great
you.
job
Thanks
putting this
Thanks all
together.
of you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.